Just as a reminder, you can visit us at rss.com/podcast/thepandapod. That's rss.com/podcast/thepandapod to grab our RSS feed, listen directly, and share Pandapod with your family and friends. You can also reach us directly via email through pandapod.podcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Hey everybody, welcome to the Panda Pod. Today we've got Jeff and Rab with us. Say hi, guys.
Hello.
Hey there.
And we are talking about psychedelics and what they may or may not mean to us. So we're going to go ahead and get started by talking about what we think may be the biggest benefits and or any concerns that we have regarding psychedelics. So let's. I'm going to kick it over to Jeff. So Jeff,
Yes.
what are the widespread, most believed benefits surrounding psychedelics in general?
I mean, there's the therapeutic benefits of them. The whole, when used in a good or in a setting with a trained therapist, you can more safely and more easily tap into like repressed memories and your just feelings in general.
Yeah, that's like the medically accepted
Yeah.
best use of it, right? Like probably the most widely accepted by the general populace is that it's used for therapeutic reasons.
Correct. Yeah. Now, for me personally, I would agree with that. Like the therapeutic, portion of it's great. Um, I think the biggest benefit of it for me personally and spiritually is that they allow this like glimpse into a. Oh, I'm trying to think how to say what I'm trying to say.
They are difficult to describe.
Yeah, they're ineffable. What you experience is you can't put it into words because there's really no way to describe it.
Well, yeah, but I do think they give you some kind of feeling that there is like a purpose to the universe in a way,
Right. Yeah.
definitely during the time that you're on them, and then I think that has lasting effects as well.
Yeah. It makes you feel like you have a purpose in the universe. It makes it feel like you're a part of the universe, like a not necessarily like an intricate part of it, but a just as important part of it as anything else kind of part
Right.
of it. And yeah, just kind of a oneness, especially with other people. For me, it really like for a long time I had kind of shut myself off from other people. And the big thing for me when I started, experimenting with psychedelics and other plant medicines was I felt a sudden desire to be connected with others and to socialize and all that. So that was definitely a big benefit for me.
Yeah, there's a lot of medical experimentation going on right now, and there's specific states that have more or less opened it up just because they want to take a look at the medical benefits. And one of the big ones that they're finding right now is with soldiers that have PTSD. Um, so soldiers are coming back with really bad PTSD, and they're using therapists and psychedelics to be able to find a way to calm down that experience. Specifically, I know that Texas is working. They have a group to study medicinal uses. Hawaii, as well as Maryland and Connecticut. And then there's specific cities throughout the United States that are also studying. So in Santa Cruz, California, um, and let's take a look here. Seattle, Washington, obviously Denver and Colorado. They have everything completely legalized and regulated, right?
Right.
But also just outside of Chicago, as well as I believe it's Ann Arbor, Michigan. So there's a lot of places right now that where they're studying the effects of the medicinal uses, and I think it's great based on what I've been hearing back. Like we just trying to keeping a pulse, right? And you hear a lot of good things coming from those.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and there's also some states that have just straight up legalized it, right? Like Oregon.
Yeah, Oregon and Colorado have them both legalized and have our regulation statute.
And that's what, mushrooms and DMT in both cases, or what?
I believe so in both cases. There are a couple um, that have like reduced penalties.
Sure. Yeah,
Um,
decriminalization. DC has
yes,
Yeah.
mushrooms decriminalized.
yeah. So DC, New Jersey, Washington, and Washington State all have reduced penalties. New Mexico has what's called a limited judicial exception. So if the judge doesn't want to doesn't want to go along with it, they don't have to. Um,
That's a funny way to pass a law.
yeah, and then there's a number of states that have active legislation going on right now within their state congresses. There's actually about I think it's close to 16, maybe 20 different states that have active legislation going on right now.
That makes
So,
state congresses sound a lot more important than they are,
right?
or a lot more busy at least.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we only hear about the big things that they talk about, right? But that's a big one. And then you guys talked about the spiritual side of it, right? You take something and then you have an effect that either kind of connects you to makes you feel connected to the earth or makes you feel connected to other people, maybe reduces anxiety, that kind of thing, and kind of gives you this sense of your place in the world, as it's been explained to me.
Right.
um, and I think that's really important too. If it has medicinal uses but also has a use in society, um, that's kind of sounds like a win for me. If it makes everybody kinder.
Sure. I would think that in maybe like a perfectly worked out society, it would be a sort of optional but strongly encouraged rite of passage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
I think I was listening to a talk from Alan Watts last week or the week before, on like the psychedelic experience and its like its place in society. Because like historically, it has like for tribes and different cultures, it has been a rite of passage. And I think I'm pretty sure it was Alan Watts, but he said something along the lines of we should have facilities in each city where people who want to have these experiences, who want to explore these different consciousness or states of consciousness, can go and be supported and be walk through it, and then more importantly be talked to and studied and figure out how we can really utilize this to better society.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I feel like it's a. I mean, I don't know how controversial an opinion do you feel like that is?
I don't feel like it's that controversial, really, especially today.
Right.
I think like in the 80s and 90s, and obviously in like the late 60s and 70s, it was a hot topic. But I think today it's becoming a really like socially accepted practice to every now and then lose your mind. You know,
Do you think that that's partially because of the medical research that's made that change in perception, or
well, I mean, I don't know. I think it's just a resurgence of old information. I mean, we had a lot of this data in the 50s and 60s, as it was being, you know, heavily researched in the psychiatric community, as well as the military and, you know, whoever else. Really, they would send out vials of acid to really anyone who said they would send back, whatever data they collected based on it. So,
Right.
um, and then, all of that was shut down and, villainized, for whatever reasons. And
So
it,
I mean, that process of villainization was done fairly successfully, in
yeah,
that,
yeah,
but not completely. So people still kept the torch alive, and now we're in a place where it seems like maybe the government doesn't care as much, or they just don't have the resources to actually shut down discussion and research and conversations.
It's going to come to a head that it hasn't come to yet. Right now, they're researching what the medicinal effects are. And one thing that I think we can all agree to for sure is that the drug companies will not like that. Um,
yeah,
if there's something, especially something like psilocybin, that you can just grow on your own and treat all of your depression and anxiety and PTSD and all of those things that they put you on antidepressants and anxiety medications for, that's a lot of money that they're going to lose.
Sure.
Especially since I think the last statistic I heard was something like 60% of America's on antidepressants. So you can imagine the amount of money that they have invested, and they're really powerful. Um, so I think we will have a fight, but like Jeff was saying, I think current day, I mean, we're turning over a guard in the government. It's slowly starting to happen where the generations that were susceptible to the anti psychedelic movement push from the government are starting to not be in government anymore, especially more locally.
Right.
We're
So the
seeing,
lead poisoning is clearing itself out.
yeah, yeah,
Maybe
for
that's
sure.
maybe that's why they're so against psychedelics, is they're just gone off that lead.
that good stuff.
Yeah, they had the good stuff, and then they used to huff turpentine. I think
Yeah,
that was the thing.
they're still sitting on a horde of Quaaludes in DC, and once those
Right.
run out, they'll legalize everything.
Those Quaaludes are sitting in a lead painted room, just
In a lead box.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like that giant vault of cheese they have, like in Missouri or whatever, underground. They just have a huge storeroom of Quaaludes sitting right under the Capitol.
I mean, I believe it.
That's the national
100%.
treasure movie I want to see.
So we know that, and we have a feeling that there's a lot of positive effects to these, and I mean everything from psilocybin mushrooms to LSD to DMT. Go ahead and list off a couple others for me.
Well, like
Um,
MDMA for sure. That I
yeah,
think MDMA will be legalized federally before everything else is.
yeah,
And I think that'll happen
MDMA.
very soon. I think probably in the next year or two, we'll see it rescheduled.
Yeah. So there's lots of benefits that they're experimenting with that have really good results so far. And to the casual user, there seem to be a lot of benefits and a value of an experience as well. However, we do know that there are some drawbacks, um, or some concerns that people
Sure,
may have if it was to be completely legalized and anybody was able to use or do them. Not that they're not now,
Sure.
but legally, I should say. I know that, and one of those is if you are susceptible to, say, schizophrenia, and you use a lot, you have a chance of having a psychotic break.
sure. Yeah.
Right.
So how do you compensate for that? What are thoughts on how to safely be able to give general availability without having to worry about a percentage of the population having a psychotic break?
I'd be interested to know what the research is on that. I mean, I know that it's true, but I also don't know what qualifies as a psychotic break and whether or not that's repeated use or, uh, one-time thing, and also like whether or not there could be a way to prevent that with, just using a more controlled dose, right, in a facility.
Right. I think that's the real key right there is, like I said earlier, this should be, federally funded, um, you know, institutions in every city where if you want to, try these substances, you can go sit down with a therapist, do it in a controlled, good set and setting, and, make sure that you're ready to have this experience on your own if you want to. I think maybe you should be like required to, I don't know, I hate to throw out the idea of a license to go on a psychedelic trip, but something along those lines, like I am certified trip sitter or something like that. Actually, that'd be pretty dope. That'd be a great job. I want to be
Yeah.
a certified trip sitter.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about it. I mean, you could do it the other way too, where you have to have an evaluation done to mitigate the percentage chance of whether or not you would have a break based on your level of depression, anxiety, or um, likelihood to have schizophrenia or some other debilitating medical issue, and then have a citizen's license, right? Um, Much like how you would do license in California when it was just medical, when it's just medical, right? You
Like
would
You mean
have
medical
talk
you
marijuana.
would
marijuana?
have a card, right,
Yeah.
with marijuana. However, it would be slightly different because it wouldn't be something you would have to. I mean, yeah, I guess you would. You'd have to see somebody for it before you could
Right.
go
Well,
get
I
it.
mean, I think that maybe it would be best if it wasn't, uh, the same as a marijuana dispensary.
Sure.
Sure.
Like,
I like the ideas of having a place to go with a professional that
Yeah, like
is.
a shamanic center of some kind where there's, you know, people who are like spiritually inclined that you can sit and talk to while you're doing these things, or therapists you can sit and talk to, or even just like a safe, comfy place for you and your friends to gather and do this without having to worry about, negative outside influences bothering you.
sure, and they could even have one trip sitter on staff for like 30 people in
Sure.
theory. I mean,
Yeah.
it does. It's not like there's that many problems that frequently,
Right.
especially if it was a controlled dose. I mean, and if you're getting off the street, you don't know exactly what the dose is going to be.
Right. And you don't always know what you're taking either. I mean, with like
True.
mushrooms, you got a pretty good idea of what you're taking because it's a mushroom, but like any blotter or pill that you take, you can't know 100% unless you've done some real extensive testing.
Right.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's the same problem that we have with every other drug at the moment, right? Um, I mean, when you get it off the street, it's some of it's cut with fentanyl, right? And you don't know
Right.
what you're getting, and it's dangerous. And but that's what the proponents of legalization are using as a talking point. Because if it's legal, then it's what's the word I'm looking for? Not like restricted, but it's
Decriminalized.
Regulated.
what?
Regulated is what Jeff said. I think that's probably the word you're looking for.
Yeah, right. Yeah, regulated for sure. So it's been regulated. You know what dose you're getting, um, and that just seems a better all around thing to me. So that being said, um, there. So from what I hear, there's just There's a lot of different psychedelics, but some are more docile than others.
True.
So I think that what I've heard is the most docile is psilocybin, which is mushrooms.
Well, I would argue that the most docile is just marijuana. You know,
Yeah, that is technically a psychedelic.
it is a psychedelic
Sure,
substance. Yeah.
sure. Um, not saying marijuana.
Okay.
Right.
Um, Definitely harder things than marijuana. Um, but they also give different experiences, right?
Absolutely.
What are some of the differences between them?
Well, I've got a theory that I came up with a while ago, and it's really like based off my understanding of like my upbringing, my Christian upbringing, and that's like the body, heart, and mind kind of idea, which is like mushrooms, in my opinion and my experience, are very much body highs and very like ego driven highs and like um, less cerebral, more physical in my experience. Whereas LSD is, in my opinion, like a very mind centric, very thought heavy kind of experience. Um, and MDMA would be more of like a spirit, a communal, in my opinion, experience where you want to like commune with the spirit, and the spirit being like other people or music or whatever it is you're around.
Yeah, I would say that's true in my experience as well. I don't have a whole lot of interesting things to add on top of that.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that they do have slight differences in their effects. Um, some being, I mean, they're all essentially natural, right? But some of them have been synthesized, so they're pure.
Sure, like LSD is just ergot from wheat, I believe.
Is it though? I thought that Ergot made like LSC or some other chemical, and then they discovered LSD after that.
No, I think it is a derivative of ergot. Like I think it is synthesized from ergot.
Oh, okay, cool.
Still, I'm pretty sure.
So, crazy things about ergot. Um, just some definitely some conspiracy theories here. Um, so ergot was the thing that was really around pre, uh, definitely pre America, but throughout history, as the kind of drug of choice.
Well, wait a minute.
Um,
Drug of choice. I thought it was like a fungus that people would accidentally get infected with sometimes.
yes, yeah, definitely that as well. However, they have found ergot in a lot of um, wine jars
Mm-hmm.
that were saved from ancient Rome that had ergot in it.
I wonder if
So
that was an accident. It seems like it could have been they could have messed up the wine a little bit, gotten there, and be like, oh wait a minute, just take a little bit. We'll hold on to that.
From what little bit of research I've done on this, I believe it was not uncommon for like wine back then to contain psychedelic um, like ingredients. Like that was just part of the wine experience.
Ah,
Like
so maybe that's why all the
especially in
Roman
like
emperors like.
Jesus's time. Like I've heard that more than likely the wine that he produced from turning water into wine was like pretty psychedelic.
Hmm. Yeah, I wonder if that's why all the Roman emperors they thought they were gods. They just had access to so much wine.
it's possible, and it's also possible, like I said, conspiracy theory time. It's also possible that democracy came around because all the senators were drinking ergot wine. Um, and they're like, we should all have a say.
Right.
Let's, that's definitely a possibility.
That's how they came up with democracy, and then capitalism was like just a bunch of people sitting around drinking IPAs.
right? Or they were the ones supplying the wine, right? They're just like, oh yes, let's keep it going, boys. We're making money hand over fist here.
I feel like
Um,
capitalism is definitely cocaine, though.
Fair. Yeah.
yeah, fair, fair. Another interesting one is the Salem witch trials.
Right.
So, so I'm not exactly sure about um, a lot of the specifics. However, um, there was a point in time where most of Salem got um, they had ergot in their wheat,
Right.
and they imbibed it, and then they thought women were witches. Um, I'm not exactly sure on the truthiness of it.
Sure.
However, you can imagine a bunch of villagers on this ergot bread, and the next thing you've got a woman who does something that's just slightly different from the normal, and they're like, "Witch, witch!" Right? So then it's that scene in Monty Python and the Holy Grail
I'm not
where
a witch.
there's
I'm not a witch.
right, and so I also think about that one and how interesting that is, that they may have destroyed the lives of so many people just because they accidentally got
Oh, they
super
absolutely
stoned.
did destroy the life of lots of people.
Well, sure, but because of the psychedelic, right?
Right. And
Yeah.
Like,
especially if you don't have another explanation of where that's coming from, because they probably didn't drink or not a lot, and they definitely didn't have wine.
yeah, and they're not used to it. It's not something that they knew that was happening to them,
Right.
and it wasn't something that they were used to doing on purpose. So just kind of all of a sudden you've got, she's a witch.
Are you guys aware of the dancing plague?
No, what is it?
Yeah, it's like where those people would like, they don't know why, but they just started dancing. Like some danced until they died, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly sure if how true it is that people danced until they died. It's very possible, but there's been multiple recorded incidents of this in medieval times where just entire villages started dancing like crazy, and you know, supposedly danced until they. Some people danced until they died, and there's not really an explanation for it. So I would imagine that uh, ergot or some other substance could explain that.
Was that the origin story of Footloose?
That's why they banned dancing.
Right.
Yeah, they don't want
So,
people. Dancing catches on, so you gotta nip it in the bud.
well, you can't have your populace too happy.
Right.
Um, and that's one of the other things that I think is uh, I mean, it's definitely a conspiracy theory. However, I also feel like it's 100% fact that we're going to have to see how the government pushes back against it. Not just from the financial side, but from the controlling the populace side. Because ever since 9/11, the American government's been pushing for more and more and more and more control over its citizens,
Sure.
referenced by COVID. Um, and so I'm really, I mean, I'm interested to see how they respond to it. We know how they've responded to it in the past, but we also know that a lot of the information that they gave in their anti psychedelic pitches is just incorrect. Um, so I'm wondering how they're going to try to get this done in a way that doesn't take away their ability to control.
I'd be interested to see what the research is on the like how many people were actually how widespread was it before it was shut down the first time compared to how widespread it is now?
I
And
mean,
especially
psychedelic use.
use and I guess general knowledge and maybe like an opinion poll. That would be interesting to see, because I mean, if it worked once, it's possible it could work again. I mean, shutting it down, that is.
I don't know. I don't think you can do a war on drugs successfully in the age of the internet. Like when everybody's in constant communication and everybody can share their experiences like pretty freely, really. Like I know
Right.
the internet's not free, but it's free enough that if we want to have a conversation about it, I mean we're doing it right now, you
Very
know.
true.
And I just don't. I think that has been the downfall of the war on drugs. Really, is just everybody has access to all the information. Anybody can go to Erowid and read, trip stories. Like it's just out there.
Yeah, not to
Right.
mention from the social aspect too. Like we know that there's a prison industrial complex, and we know that minorities are targeted for incarceration more often, and we're more aware of these types of things, that it makes it from this side, it also makes it even more difficult for them to have a war on drugs, because if you start locking people up for doing something that's not harming anybody, people have a real problem with that. And especially if they began to target specific groups of people, which is generally what they do, is they single out a single group of people and then go after them. So, and one of the big reasons that they were afraid of it the last go around is because the Vietnam War was going on and people did not want to join the military. People are like, why are we at war? Why are we doing all this stuff? And they did not like that. So it caused some big problems. But like Jeff was saying, I don't think they could be really successful in shutting it down. But I'm interested to see what they do to curb it.
Right. Well, I mean, it is a fact that former Nixon aide has come out and said that the war on drugs was orchestrated to criminalize being black and being a hippie. Those two things can obviously not be directly criminalized, but they can lock people up for drug use, especially leaders in those communities, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that's explicitly said on record. So it's not, that's not a conspiracy. I mean, I guess somebody could claim that that person is lying, but they were the ones who executed it.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy how the government tries to interject itself with the psychedelics in particular. And this can kind of lead us down another road, since we're talking about psychedelics and the government, which was during the same period of time when they had MKUltra, um, which is a fact that they had the MKUltra project. That is not a conspiracy theory. That has been admitted by uh, the people who are in charge of it in Congress,
Yeah,
and
the
in the
documents
Senate.
are out there. Yeah.
The documents are out there. This did happen. They did experiment on people with LSD, and MDMA, I believe. Um, and so, what they can't ban, they attempt to control, and use for their own purposes, right? So, let's take another example of how they do this today, right? So, the Twitter files. Um, so the government gets in league with social media companies in order to prevent or um, either to prevent a narrative from being established, or to create a narrative that needs to be established. Um, and so they did the same thing with psychedelics.
In what way?
So they did a lot of things with MK Ultra.
Sure.
The first one of the I'll give you the fun ones.
Okay.
So the most fun one was that they would hire prostitutes to get Johns. to go back to a room with them. They would spike the drinks of the Johns with LSD,
Or
and
release aerosol in the air.
Right.
It's
yeah, or
hilarious.
release aerosol, and then a doctor would sit behind a two-way mirror and watch them. The Johns were, unbeknown to them, taking LSD, and they just wanted to know what would happen because they didn't have any way to. They had limited ways to study it, to study the effects. So that's a fun one.
I have to say, aerosolized LSD sounds like something that Adam West Batman would have.
Yes, it sounds like something I want. Like, just imagine like hot boxing a tent with aerosol LSD. Hell yeah! Although this is a good time, just in reference to that MK Ultra thing you just talked about, how they were dosing people. This I feel like it's important. I got to get this out there. People, do not dose your friends. Like, don't give your friends a dose of any psychedelic substance without their knowledge. Like, it's an experience that you don't want forced on you, and it's something you need to go into understanding what's going to happen. That'll be the only PSA in all this I probably give. But don't dose your friends.
I'll give one too. The Panda Pod does not endorse doing anything illegal. So do not do anything illegal based on anything you hear in this
Right.
podcast.
This whole conversation's theoretical.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yes.
I'll go out on record saying I endorse doing illegal things, but yeah,
Same,
it's
actually.
definitely not it's not the views of the Panda Pod.
Yeah, it's not the views of the Panda Pod in general. Um so um some some other funny ones. Um so not only did they do that, um but they also did this to college students. Um, there were students in college, who were coerced into, taking large amounts of LSD, and one of them just happened to be the Unabomber.
Right.
So the government, as far as I'm concerned, is responsible for that one. Um, well, especially the CIA, I'll say, not necessarily the government as a whole, but definitely the CIA.
Wasn't Charles Manson a Manchurian candidate as well? Like an
Yes,
MK Ultra Manchurian
yes,
candidate?
yeah. So there was a journalist, from Rolling Stone, Tom O'Neill.
Right.
And he was a very big Rolling Stones, journalist at the time. He was told to give a fluff piece about, um on like the 10th anniversary or whatever it was at the
Sure.
time of the killings and all that, and he wasn't really satisfied. Like, the more he looked into it, the more there were lots of holes.
Right.
And so and so one of the things that he found that's directly to this statement is, so Manson would get arrested fairly often. um And every time he got arrested, they would let him out. He was on parole. Like, he got arrested and tried the first time he was caught. Um, doing, I don't know what that exact charge was, but he got put on parole and then discharged. And he remained on parole for years. And anytime that they would drag him in, or he would accidentally get arrested, they would let him go, and they would say that somebody up, like, whoever arrested him, the detective, would be like, I caught the guy, and then a phone call would come down from the government saying that this is over your head, you need to let him
Right.
go. And they suspect that the CIA essentially taught Manson how to do the first part of the two part. There was two parts of the research that the government was trying to do. The first one was to eliminate memories, and replace memories using psychedelics. And then the second part of it was to essentially, after you would erase somebody's personality and then give them a new personality with instructions to do something, and then they would forget about it after they did it. And that's what
Right.
they were trying to use the psychedelics for. And they Tim goes on to say in his book that he believes that the government taught Manson how to use specific um, techniques with the people that were around him to get them to do things like go kill people and things like that without them being aware that he was telling them to do those things.
Right.
um,
Well, it seems plausible. Um, and I mean, he was also like sort of a cult leader too, right? And I feel like it's possible that some of the cult behavior in California in general had to do with other such cases that just haven't been uncovered.
I mean, there's definitely a lot of cults in California um, that are really strange. I was listening to an episode of Rogan that just came out a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about that very thing. I can't remember who the guest was off the top of my head, but they were saying the exact same thing, that most of the cults started in California and then they kind of moved. Um, they would get people would start getting wise to what they were doing, and then the leader would move to a different place.
Right.
Um, One of those is this. There was this guy who was leading a cult, and flew to he fled California and went to Hawaii with his cult. There's another one that started in California and wound up in Texas, um, in Austin. um, Rogan, when he famously talks about the new comedy club that he opened up, the original building that he bought for the comedy club was actually built by a cult.
Really?
And he was unaware of this until after he had bought the building. So
Hell yeah.
then they had to do whatever they had to do to he had to do whatever he had to do to not have to buy the building.
Ah. Well, why?
And
Why
then
wouldn't you want one that was run but made by a cult? It's got too many
I,
secret
I think it
passages.
was I think well I think that specific cult was a little too creepy for him.
Oh, I see.
Um, but he did find a different place, and that club is up now. But um, to your point, like, yes, a lot of cults start in California. Um, for what reason, I don't know. I don't know if that's connected to MK Ultra or not.
Well,
But
I mean, there's also Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard. That was around the same time as early MKUltra days.
yep, yep, those are around the same time, and that's definitely in California. I mean, that's Hollywood.
Right. I mean, I
So
feel like there's some kind of connection, though. I think there's more to the Manson story than even Tom O'Neill revealed, probably. Especially if you look at copycats and other, people doing that they just like rhyme with that.
and there's a lot of other things related to MK Ultra. Um, I mean, and what's so weird about it is a lot of their records were purposefully destroyed in a purge in 1973. um,
Seems legit.
the only thing that wasn't destroyed was the financials, because Congress was funding the financials.
You got to hang
So
on to that.
yeah, so you've got to hang on to that. But they had well over 80 different programs that they were running during the time. Speaking of Manson, there was also a clinic. I don't remember what it's called, but there was a clinic around where they were, and that clinic was supposedly an outpost for the CIA, where they were also doing experiments with LSD. So, like a public clinic.
Right.
They were just dosing whoever,
Sure. Yeah. I mean, when
like
when you're
whoever
doing
they
that's
get their
and that's
hands on.
another That's almost in the same vein as like making it legal, or legal so it can be regulated, right? I mean, when something is so clandestine like that, or clandestine like that, right? They're not they can do whatever they want and get away with it because they're not accountable to anybody for it.
Yeah, I mean the CIA and the FBI aren't really accountable to anybody, and I mean, and that's definitely a problem. Um, but there's also the argument that we need them even if they're terrible. Um, so pick your poison,
Yeah, where
kind
else
of.
am I gonna get my LSD?
Yeah, where else are we gonna get our LSD? Um, I mean they were giving it to uh GIs well before um the more current medical treatments that they've been experimenting with.
And by
Um,
GIs you mean giant insects, right?
yeah, giant insects. The giant insects that definitely came from space. That's our LSD is our biggest export into outer space by far.
Yeah, that's the only thing that Earth's good for. It's the only place that ergot grows. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, can't get
Yeah,
anywhere else. Can't make them
yeah,
like Earth does.
yeah. I mean, our climate's just so special.
it's like our
Um,
version of spice.
the government. Well, I keep saying the government, but what I mean by the government is the CIA. Um, to do this on the public without the public's knowledge is really scary. Um, and especially frustrating. Um, because before this point and during this time is the same time when they were vilifying the public for using it themselves, but at the same time using it on unwitting people as test subjects.
Now, what years is MKUltra actually confirmed to have happened
MK Ultra began on April 13th, 1953,
officially?
officially. That's when the CIA officially approved the project.
Okay,
There were, I'm not any kind of expert about it, but I know that there were two different programs before MK Ultra that did very similar things.
sure.
So it was kind of like a continuation of those other programs.
Okay,
Um,
and when did it officially end?
I believe somewhere around 1977.
Okay, so I mean that would be, yeah. There's definitely some overlap with war on drugs type behavior as well.
Yeah, two lawsuits related to the program reached the Supreme Court in the 80s.
Okay,
But and both were about the protection of the government over citizens' rights. Um, so yeah, yeah. I mean, just imagine you go to a coffee shop and you don't know that there's a CIA agent working in the local Starbucks and that
I
lattes.
don't think I have to imagine that.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that's just real.
yeah. It's pretty scary, but I think the one of the key takeaways is just like everything else, you have good actors and bad actors. And it's not necessarily the tool that is good and bad as much as the person using the tool. Um, which is why going back to the beginning, I think it's so important to have a safe space with a properly trained expert to look over you. Um,
right.
And if you can't find a properly trained expert, at least have an experienced friend with you. Don't do it alone.
Yes, good point.
Find a trip sitter. Find somebody who is willing to just sit with you for 12 hours and watch TV and talk to you and hydrate you because you're going to need to drink some water. All right.
Once again, nothing said here is an official endorsement by the Panda Pod.
Of course not.
I mean,
For
this is.
sure.
I mean, Jeff did start his statement with "if you're going to."
Yeah, if you're going to do something that we don't recommend you to do, there's definitely a better way to do something.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah, and for the record, I do endorse doing things illegal, but nothing specific. There's no actionable statement here. It's just illegal things in general.
Right. Be gay, do crimes.
Right.
I'm into that.
Yeah.
Why that statement?
Oh, it's just that's a
Is it an internet meme?
yeah. It's just a saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just one that I'm not privy to. That happens a lot. So I don't browse the pages of Reddit
It's like a catchphrase,
anymore.
I'd say, more than an internet
Yeah,
meme.
It's
yeah,
a
like a
catchphrase.
slogan.
Yeah.
So it's a tattoo potentially.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, sure. I've seen tattoos of it. Yeah.
I wonder how many
Okay.
Chinese characters it is.
That's what you think you're getting, but you get something completely different.
Yeah.
Like
No, get that on purpose and go to China and just like
yeah, you
pretend
think you're
that you don't
getting
know what
be
it's
gay,
for.
do crimes, but it just says gay criminal.
or be straight, follow the law. They just give you the opposite. Oh man.
Well, other MKULTRA programs that I'm particularly interested in, the dolphin study was connected to it, right?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, the dolphin study. I'd completely forgotten about
yeah,
that.
I had actually listened to something about that this morning, and I had no idea. So, Rab, take it off. Explain the dolphins to everybody.
Well, the way I understand it, there was a program that was being paid to research LSD and whether or not it could potentially be used. Well, I guess kind of what its effects were on dolphins. Specifically, I think they were trying to make them be able to communicate in human language or as close as human language as they could. Um, so in order to do that, they had a woman. They basically flooded the house almost and had the dolphin. I mean, it was a specially built house to handle this, but like the bottom floor of the house was completely water, so the dolphin could swim around in the house. And they had a woman living with the dolphin, and she was like its interpreter and handler and stuff. And she's the person who came out and talked about it, I believe. Have I said anything wrong so far?
No, that all sounds accurate.
Yeah, and so
That's a part that I didn't know about. I heard something a little slightly different, but maybe you're getting into that. So
yeah, I mean the kicker of the story is that whenever the dolphin would get like upset and not want to do its training, she would jerk it off. So that's the reason that this is like a humorous anecdote.
well, what I heard this morning, and I mean, and this is just who knows what you hear on the internet, right? Like,
Right.
but what I heard was that they were using LSD to attempt to train dolphins to essentially assassinate people
Oh yeah,
using
I
that's
wouldn't
for
be
sure.
surprised.
using
Yeah.
using what was essentially canned air with a needle in it that
Okay.
would shoot the needle out of the canned air at people underwater
Oh, I
essentially
see.
to yeah so that's what I heard that they were making dolphin snipers.
Well, considering it's
um,
MK Ultra, I wouldn't be surprised if that's what they were secretly actually trying to do.
I'm pretty sure somewhere in Europe there's a beluga whale that like interacts with people on a regular basis on some
yes.
coast that had escaped like a Russian
Yep. Yeah.
equivalent of this.
Right.
So the story with that is there was a whale that was part of the KGB's spy network that they were using these dolphins for that and or beluga whales. I'm sorry, and the whale got lost essentially and found its way close to Norway,
Yeah.
and so it wound up getting stuck and they wound up saving it, but they found essentially Russian technology on it. Um,
Hmm.
like I'm not sure, I don't quite remember whether or not it was like a camera or if it was just a tracking device or whatever it was,
Right.
but they essentially found Russian Russian technology.
It had a call on that said, "If found, return to Vladimir Putin."
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, as far as technology is concerned, like just the general technology, I mean, we tag animals all the time, so it's
Oh
not
sure.
like crazy for there to be a tag on something. But
Yep.
yeah, I mean, I would now I really want to see Dolphin James Bond.
right? And
Yes.
just in a skin tight dolphin friendly tuxedo.
Right.
Just it's got an Omega watch on, and like that does some special kind of tracking or radar. Um, and he's got a gun strapped to him that just blows air with needles on it.
Go gadget porpoise.
Right.
License to krill.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So fun question. If there's an animal that you would make a spy, what would you pick?
Bat.
Ooh. Why bat?
I mean, I feel like they're pretty stealthy. They go at night, and they. I mean, I feel like there's bats in almost every part of the world, right? So you could, if you could generically, if you're just choosing like a general category of animal, right? Bats are everywhere, so you could pretty easily, I feel like, use them to do espionage.
I think I'd choose a flying squirrel.
Oh yeah.
You know, and then like train it to be a ninja. Give it like little flying squirrel ninja stars.
Oh, that'd be sick.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, so before I say mine, I do want to say that they did have another program in MKUltra, where they were essentially attempting to make spies out of cats.
Right.
Um, so so be careful on where you pick up your wild kittens, ladies and gents, because it may
Some
be
of
a
them,
government
some
spy.
of them bitches are narcs. All right, let's be
Yeah,
careful.
yeah, but you gotta
My
watch
cat gave
out.
me LSD. What do I do?
And you know, I think they chose cats because they knew that it was only a matter of time until Napster was released. And they were really worried about copyrights.
Wait, what?
Yeah, that's my conspiracy that they were using cats on purpose for households to catch people using Napster.
Oh,
Ah.
I wasn't sure where you were going with that. Okay,
Yeah,
Makes
they were
sense.
really worried about copyright infringement. And people making copies of VHS of movies on VHS. Um,
Operation Copycat.
yeah, Operation
oh,
Copycat.
that was
Yeah,
good.
yeah. If I had to pick one, I'm not quite sure. Maybe I would pick. I don't know. Maybe I'll go with Bat too, because the more I think about it, I mean, you're talking spy, right? So a spy's got to be able to do a number of things. And we definitely get pandemics from bats. Not saying the most recent one was that way or not, but um, we've definitely had a lot of bat viruses jump. So why wouldn't you inject your bats with viruses when you send them over to spy?
Yeah, they're already trained
Do
in
some
biological warfare.
Yeah, do some real
Nice.
damage. That makes sense to me.
They have built-in radar too.
Yeah, built-in radar just like dolphins. We're coming across a pattern here of sonar equipped animals being spies.
Bats are just the dolphins of the sky.
Facts.
What's the dolphins of land? What land creature has?
Humans, I guess.
It's just us.
I guess I'd
We have.
train a human to be a spy.
Yeah, that's
You
true.
know,
Good point.
I mean, would it be a dog
maybe.
because of the smell and the hearing?
I think dogs are too dumb.
Yeah, dolphins are pretty smart. They're
I mean, I'm
smart.
not. Bats aren't all that intelligent either, but they're also tiny.
I mean, dogs are smarter than cats, and they definitely tried it with cats.
Are they? I don't know that dogs are smarter than cats. I
They
think they're just
actually
a different
are.
kind of
That
intelligent.
No, they actually are. They've done studies now where they've ranked the creatures by general intelligence, um, and they I do have gripes with it. However, I don't think it's completely accurate because they have dolphins listed a little lower than I think they should be. Um, I think they should probably be above, if not under, chimpanzees.
Yeah.
And they're not. Um,
IQ tests are racist against dolphins, famously.
Yeah, it's a fact.
yeah, for sure. If you, not literally, but in this fictitious world, were to do an experiment with LSD, who or what group of people or animals or what have you would you give LSD to?
Well, I certainly wouldn't give it to animals because they didn't consent to that. So it would have to be some consenting group of people, right? Or is this a totally fictitious question where I have to pretend I'm the CIA?
This is a totally fictitious question where you're pretending that you're the CIA and you have a mandate to see what happens when you give things or people LSD.
Maybe the government of the European Union. I think that'd be pretty funny.
Specifically the chamber.
Yeah, like or yeah, or maybe just like the prime ministers and stuff of various EU countries too. I think like that would be a good. That feels fairly ethical compared to just giving it to civilians.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. What do you think, Jeff?
I would give it to a large group of Nazarenes, which is a Christian denomination that I grew up in. I think it would be really interesting to go to like the National Nazarene Convention, which gets together like 20,000 of these people, and then just dose all of them and see what realizations they come to about life.
There's some
So
angels visiting today.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean we'd see yeah, that'd be really interesting to see what that sermon looks like.
Go there, dose all those people, and then dress up as God.
So I think I'd probably pick the Amish
Oh man.
just because I want to see what amazing things that they would build. Just because they're great builders. I want to see
Yeah.
what they create on
I
LSD.
got a 4D cabinet from that
Yeah.
Amish guy over there.
The MC Escher barn.
Yeah.
They create some form of technology by mistake that they're banned from using.
It's like, we
Yeah.
hate this. Man,
Damn it, we
I
created the
guess we'll
phone.
sell it at the outlet mall down the road.
Right?
Yeah, they figure out a way to make phones out of wood.
And they look like the first cell phones, right? Like there's a box
Right.
that connects straps to it to wear it like a backpack with a crank.
Yeah, there's a tiny little wood guitar apparatus or something that vibrates inside to make the noise, and then there's wooden twigs for the antenna.
They have to be a specific type of wood though. Like they only use good wood. So I mean, is it like cherry or a really old oak?
Whatever kind of wood they use to make dowsing rods.
I don't. Do they use dowsing rods? I don't
I
know
don't
if
know
they're
the Amish
that.
do. I don't think
I
the
don't.
Amish
I don't know if they're that far back.
do.
They're using
Yeah, I don't think that seems like a very Amish thing to do. That's more like wide open landscape type behavior.
Y-shaped twigs. It's, I mean, could you imagine though if they did use dowsing rods, and you've got one person driving the buggy and the person beside them is just using the dowsing rod, just turning it from side to side, trying to.
Go left, go left.
Right.
Yeah, it's like Google Maps for them.
maybe that's what they make. They make this giant 3D map,
It's just another Earth.
except theirs is flat, right? Like they make the flat version.
Right,
Um,
okay.
How do you know we're not living on that? You
Oh,
know,
why? Why would you go there right now? Why?
we're all living on an Amish flat Earth that's in some barn.
That's the new MK Ultra.
It's a JK Ultra.
Jebediah.
Klaus.
Yeah.
From the things that we've talked about today, is there anything that either of you want to bring up that we didn't hit a note on? We've talked about quite a bit.
I feel like I could talk for literal days about psychedelics, honestly.
Right.
Like, there's so much more. Like, I could talk about how I personally think that mushrooms are alien, not that they're aliens, but that they were brought to Earth via panspermia, and like when we eat them, we're like experiencing a different kind of global consciousness. And like, I could go on for days about this stuff, but obviously we don't have time for all of that. We're gonna have to revisit psychedelics at some point for sure.
Certainly.
Is that what happened? Did the Amish get a hold of Ergot and then they created the mushrooms? And that's the kind of psychic telephone that we have to the aliens.
Yeah, the Amish
Yeah.
have been around for thousands and thousands of
Yeah.
years.
The ancient Amish civilizations.
Yeah, the ancient Amish civilization. How do you know that they didn't exist before?
How do
before,
you know that
before
the
they
Amish didn't exist before Jesus Christ? Huh?
before
How do you know
yeah
that?
yeah they might have been around before the Younger Dryas.
They didn't know what
That's
they
all
were
I'm
mad
saying.
at yet. They knew that in the future one day they were going to be mad at something, but it hadn't been invented yet.
Man, we didn't even touch on like the stoned ape theory, which I
Right.
think
Yeah, that's a
is
very interesting theory.
is
Bring it up. Let's
huge. Yeah.
go.
Well, I mean, we're pushing an hour and 10 minutes already. Like,
I mean, I think
we
it's
won't be
worth
able to get all this
mentioning.
into an
It's
episode.
basically just that people evolve consciousness by eating mushrooms. I mean, that's
Right,
like what we
right.
think
That
of consciousness came from
right.
mushrooms, possibly.
Hmm.
Yeah. So are mushrooms an alien plant?
I think so. I think that I don't know that there's anything else on Earth that behaves like mushrooms do. You know, like I'm
Yeah.
sure you can trace back the tree of life or whatever and find some spot for it, but like I think it came from another planet.
And now, do
Well,
you think that about mushrooms in general, or just psilocybin mushrooms?
I think mushrooms in general.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting theory.
yeah, and one thing to think about with that is they don't use um, osmosis, right? They have their underground networks of what's that stuff called? Um,
Mycelium.
yeah, mycelium. That creates a connection, and they've recently proven that essentially the mushrooms can talk to trees.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
which is crazy. Um, so if you have a forest, which is generally where they grow, um, you have, or at least definitely certain types, um, you have an entire forest of trees talking to each other, um, which goes to that like Mother Earth ayahuasca type conversation.
Right. Yeah, we
Um,
barely talked about ayahuasca or peyote at
Y-
all.
Yeah,
yeah,
we didn't really touch on DMT
we
that
can
much either.
yeah
Like
we
there's just
can
so
save
much more to talk
those.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, we can save those for a follow up episode.
Right.
But specifically, mushrooms and LSD, as being as far as I understand it, the most commonly used,
Right. And
um,
MDMA as
and
well.
MDMA,
Right.
as the most commonly used um, psychedelics. Um, I think we've covered fairly well. I mean, there's so much you can talk about with this stuff, like you said.
Yeah. We'll
I
come
mean,
back
you
to it.
can literally go on forever, but um, yeah. So I think that's going to wrap it up for us. So once again, thank you everybody for listening to us talk about things that we enjoy, and we look forward to having you with us again as we pick another topic and have some great conversation. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you later.
Have a good one.
Bye.